Young man sells candies on the street to help his mother when Vinicius Jr. discovers he changes his life forever. Before you continue, tell me where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. The scorching sun reflected off the pavement as João weaved through the stopped cars, holding a small bag filled with candy. His shirt, a size too big, clung to his skin, damp with sweat. Every day was the same: early mornings, long hours at the intersection, and the silent hope that people would be kind enough to buy a few sweets. At just 12 years old, João had no choice but to help his mother, Maria. She worked as a domestic cleaner, waking up before sunrise and returning home exhausted long after dark. Even with all her effort, the money was never enough. Rent, food, electricity, every bill was a battle, and João knew it. He had learned far too early that childhood was a luxury he couldn't afford. As he moved between the cars, he approached a woman in the driver's seat of a sleek black sedan. "Excuse me, ma'am. Would you like to buy some candy? Just one real." His voice was polite but weary, a tone shaped by rejection. The woman barely glanced at him before rolling up her window. João swallowed his disappointment and moved on. He was used to it. By midday, the heat became unbearable. João took a break on the sidewalk, sitting on the curb and counting the few coins in his hand. It wasn't much. He sighed, thinking about his mother. The previous night, he had seen her at the kitchen table, staring at an unpaid electricity bill, silent tears streaming down her face. She hadn't noticed him watching, but João had made a promise to himself. He would do whatever it took to ease her burden. Despite the hardships, João had one escape: football. Whenever he finished selling, he would rush to the dusty lot near his home, where his friends waited with a half-deflated ball. They played until the streetlights flickered on, until their feet were sore and their shirts were drenched in sweat. For those brief moments, João wasn't just a boy selling candy on the street. He was a striker, dribbling past defenders, scoring goals, and imagining himself in a grand stadium, the crowd chanting his name. One day, on his way home after a long day at the intersection, João stopped in front of an electronics store. A group of people had gathered outside, their eyes glued to the large TV screen in the display window. Curious, he squeezed between them. It was a Real Madrid match. His heart raced as he watched Vinicius Jr. sprint down the field, skillfully weaving past defenders before striking the ball into the net. The crowd on TV erupted in cheers, and João couldn't help but smile. "Someday," he whispered to himself. Little did he know, fate was about to bring him closer to his dream in a way he could never have imagined. João stood in front of the electronics store long after the match had ended, replaying Vinicius Jr.'s goal in his mind. The way he moved, the precision, the sheer joy of the game, it all felt like a distant dream. Yet, deep inside, João refused to believe that dreams were only for the privileged. As he walked home, kicking a small rock along the pavement like a makeshift football, he imagined himself in Vinicius Jr.'s place, wearing the white jersey, running across the field, scoring the winning goal. It was foolish, maybe, but it made the long walk home feel shorter. At home, Maria was preparing a simple meal, rice and beans, as usual. She greeted João with a tired smile, brushing his messy hair aside. "How was your day, Filho?" "Sold most of the candy," he replied, sitting at the table. He left out the part about standing under the blazing sun for hours, about people ignoring him, about his feet aching from walking all day. Maria sat across from him and let out a sigh. "We'll get through this," she said softly, though her eyes revealed her exhaustion. That night, after washing his plate, João grabbed his tattered football from the corner and ran outside. The streets were dimly lit, but his friends were already there, barefoot and ready. The moment the ball touched his feet, the worries of the day melted away. He dribbled past one friend, then another, feeling the thrill of control, of movement. Here, he wasn't just a boy selling candy, he was a footballer. As the game ended, João sat on the sidewalk, catching his breath. "One day, I'll be like Vinicius Jr., he murmured, half to himself. His friends laughed, not out of cruelty, but because dreams like that seemed impossible where they lived. The next morning, João returned to the intersection, the city already buzzing with life. As he approached a red light, he spotted a man lowering his car window. "How much for all the candy, garoto?" the man asked. João hesitated, confused. "All of it." The man nodded, handing him a few bills. Joao's eyes widened. He had never sold everything at once before. "Never stop chasing your dreams," the man said before driving off. Joao watched the car disappear, gripping the money tightly. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. The following days felt different. Joao's usual routine, waking up early, picking up his candy, standing at the intersection, hadn't changed, but there was something new inside him. A tiny flicker of hope, sparked by the stranger's words, "Never stop chasing your dreams." That morning, as Joao moved between cars, a man in a white SUV waved him over. The window rolled down, and Joao instinctively held up his bag of candy. "Good morning, kid. What's your name?" the man asked. "Joao," he answered hesitantly. People usually ignored him or bought candy without asking anything personal. "Joao, do you like football?" His eyes lit up. "Yes, sir. I love it." The man smiled and took out his phone. "Would you mind if I recorded a quick video? I want to share your story." Joao hesitated. He wasn't used to being noticed. But something told him this wasn't just another stranger. He nodded. The man hit record. "This is Joao. He works hard every day, selling candy to help his mother. But he has a dream, to become a football player." Joao smiled nervously. "One day, I want to play like Vinicius Jr., he said, gripping the bag of candy tightly. The man ended the recording and patted Joao's shoulder. "I'll post this. You never know who might see it." At first, Joao didn't think much of it. People posted things online all the time. But that evening, when he got home, something unusual happened. His neighbor, a teenager who spent hours glued to his phone, rushed up to him. "Joao, you're everywhere, man." Joao frowned. "What do you mean?" "The video. The one that guy recorded. It's going viral." Joao's heart skipped a beat. He hurried inside, where his mother was already staring at an old borrowed phone, her hands trembling. She turned the screen to him. There it was. His face. His voice. Thousands of shares, likes, and comments. People from all over were talking about him, moved by his story. And then, the impossible happened. One comment, sitting at the top of the post, made Joao's breath hitch. It was from Vinicius Jr. himself. "Where is this kid? I want to meet him." Joao stared at the screen, unable to believe what he was seeing. His hands trembled as he reread the comment. Vinicius Jr. wanted to meet him. His mother covered her mouth in shock. "Meu Deus, Joao. This is real?" Outside, neighbors had already heard the news. Some kids from the neighborhood ran to his house, shouting his name. Everyone was excited, but Joao felt paralyzed. This was too big. Things like this didn't happen to kids like him. The next morning, a group of reporters showed up at the intersection where Joao sold his candy. Cameras flashed, microphones were pointed at him, and questions came all at once. "How do you feel about Vinicius Jr. seeing your story? What would you say to him if you met him? Do you believe this could change your life?" Joao, still overwhelmed, simply said, "I just want to meet him and thank him." And then, the biggest surprise of all. While Joao was still processing everything, his mother received a phone call. A representative from Vinicius Jr.'s team. They had been trying to reach Joao. A few hours later, Joao and his mother were taken to an office where a video call was set up. The screen flickered, and suddenly, Vinicius Jr. appeared, smiling. "Ei, Joao. How are you, my friend?" Joao couldn't breathe for a second. He swallowed hard, trying to find words. I can't believe this." Vinicius laughed. "I saw your video. You're a fighter, Garoto. Reminds me a lot of myself when I was your age." Joao's mother wiped tears from her eyes, unable to speak. Then, Vinicius said something that changed everything. "I want you to come to Madrid. You and your May. I want to meet you in person." Silence. Joao's heart pounded in his chest. "Madrid?" "Yes. You'll visit our training center, meet the team, and we'll play some football together. What do you say?" Joao didn't even realize the tears rolling down his face. He looked at his mother, who nodded, unable to contain her emotion. "Yes. João finally shouted. Vinicius smiled. "All right, Garoto. Pack your bags." For the first time in his life, João wasn't just dreaming. His dream was becoming real. João had never been on an airplane before. As the engines roared and the aircraft lifted off the ground, he clutched his mother's hand, eyes wide with amazement. Through the small window, the city he had known all his life grew smaller and smaller until it was just a distant blur beneath the clouds. The entire journey felt like a dream. Flight attendants treated them with kindness, offering snacks João had never tasted before. His mother, still in disbelief, kept whispering prayers, thanking God for the miracle unfolding before them. After hours of travel, they finally landed in Madrid. At the airport, a team of representatives from Real Madrid was waiting for them, holding a sign with João's name on it. Cameras flashed as João and his mother were escorted into a car that would take them to the Real Madrid training facility. As they arrived, João stepped out and stared in awe. The place was even bigger and more beautiful than he had imagined. The pristine fields, the massive club logo on the buildings, it felt unreal. And then, it happened. From across the field, Vinicius Jr. appeared. Wearing his training gear, a big smile on his face, he jogged toward João and his mother. "João, you made it, my friend," Vinicius said, opening his arms. João, still frozen in disbelief, took a step forward. Then another. And suddenly, he was running. He jumped into Vinicius' arms, hugging him tightly. The cameras captured the moment, but João didn't care about that. This was real. His mother, overwhelmed with emotion, wiped away her tears as she approached. "Muito obrigada, Vinicius. You have no idea what this means to us." Vinicius smiled warmly. "It's my pleasure. João's story touched me. And now, it's time for him to play some football." João's eyes widened. "With you?" Vinicius laughed. "Of course. And with some of my teammates too. Ready to show us what you got?" João nodded, heart pounding with excitement. This wasn't just a visit. This was a moment that would change his life forever. As he laced up the boots that had been gifted to him, João stepped onto the field, realizing that, for the first time in his life, he wasn't just a boy selling candy on the streets. He was a footballer. The ball rolled toward João. His heart pounded as he controlled it, his touch surprisingly steady despite his nerves. Across from him, Vinicius Jr. grinned, urging him forward. Around them, a few Real Madrid players watched, amused by the young boy's determination. "Come on, Garoto, show me what you got," Vinicius teased. João took a deep breath, then he moved. He dribbled forward, his bare feet on the streets replaced by brand-new cleats on the pristine grass. He feinted left, then cut right, mimicking moves he had only seen on television. The players laughed and cheered as João nutmegged one of them, earning an exaggerated reaction from Vinicius. "Oh, did you see that?" Vinicius shouted, throwing his hands up. João couldn't help but laugh, his anxiety melting away. For the first time in his life, he was playing with professionals, not just watching from a dusty street corner. After the match, Vinicius pulled João aside. "That was amazing, João. You have something special." João's smile faded slightly. "But I don't have a way to train like this back home. I have to work." Vinicius' expression turned serious. "That's about to change." He placed a hand on João's shoulder. "I've arranged something for you. You and your mother won't have to struggle anymore." João's mother gasped. "What do you mean?" Vinicius smiled. "A new home. Financial support. And João, you're getting a spot at a football academy in Brazil. A real chance to follow your dream." João's knees felt weak. You mean I can really play football?" "Not just play," Vinicius corrected. "Train. Compete. And one day, maybe even make it as a professional." Tears welled in João's eyes. He looked at his mother, who was already crying. She pulled him into a tight hug, unable to speak. Everything had changed. The flight home felt different. João wasn't just a kid returning to his normal life. He was heading toward a new future. When they arrived back in Brazil, João saw their new home for the first time. It wasn't a mansion, but it was safe, warm, and theirs. Weeks later, João arrived at his new academy. As he stepped onto the field for his first official training session, he thought about the intersection where he used to sell candy. About the day that stranger recorded his story. About Vinicius Jr., who had given him a chance. And then, as the coach called his name, João tied his boots, took a deep breath, and ran onto the field, not as a street vendor, but as a footballer chasing his dream. He was just getting started.